Okay, this is the project that we're going to be doing today. 'Tis the season, a little Santa sleigh filled with gifts. And it's in a calendar holder that comes with inserts. You take the insert out, you paint the insert. It's two-sided so that you can paint a different season on the other side. And you can get insert refills. I got the calendar on the Artist Club. Okay, this project is going to be painted on a wood calendar holder that has an insert. It came from Artist Club, and it will come unfinished like this. And I just wanted to tell you what I did to prepare this for painting. I took my first coat of paint, which is soft black, and I mixed sealer, equal amounts of sealer, in with my paint. And I rolled on with a roller one coat with the sealer in it. Then after it dried, I lightly sanded it with just a foam sanding pad. And then the second coat, when I put the second coat of soft black on, I mixed equal parts of varnish with it. That way my surface is completely sealed. It's painted, it's sealed. I don't have to come back and do anything to it after it is done. I haven't done anything to the back side of this panel yet because I can paint something else on it. This panel just slides in here. You can buy extra panels for it. I got this at Artist Club. I think it's like $21.99. And it has this thing that holds on the calendar pages, and then all of the hardware that goes with it. So I'm going to show you what I did to prep this panel. Now with the panel I did the same thing. I base coated it with winter blue, and I mixed in my all-purpose sealer with my paint. I did not mix varnish in with this because we're going to paint on top of it, and I will come back and seal it later. So, how I did this background is, I'm just going to show you on a piece of paper here how I did it. So I rolled on one coat of winter blue, and then I came back and rolled on a second coat to get the surface re-wet. Now when I use my rollers, I always dampen them first before I even start putting paint in them with some water, and then squeeze it out in a paper towel or a rag, any excess water, because that will make my roller easier to clean when I'm done with it. Then I take a sea sponge. I've just got a small piece of sea sponge here, and I'm going to dampen it in water, wring it out. Wring it out really good. You just want a little bit of water in that sponge. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up some white paint on my sea sponge. Now I'm just going to put it on here like that. It's pretty rough right now. I'm going to come back with my wet side of my sponge, and I just do a swirling motion like this. I just want to give the look of a winter sky. So I just swirl it around. And soften it. I don't want any hard places in the white, and that's all I do to create the background for my piece. Okay, so I'm going to get my table cleaned up, get my pattern traced on, and we're going to get going. Okay, I'm getting ready to transfer my pattern on here, and I wanted to tell you how I got it centered. I put the panel back into the holder, and I used my chalk pencil and drew the inside of where you would see it. And then I folded my pattern, lined it up and folded it down the center, And then I marked a center line with my chalk pencil, which you probably can't see on the camera, with down the middle. So I could line up my fold with my chalk pencil. And I also put a mark over here with my chalk pencil so that I could see about where I needed my bottom line to be. So that should make me come in about 2 inches on each side from where this bottom part sits. So when I transfer my pattern, I'm not going to transfer any of these details, the ribbon lines, the bows, the ornaments on the tree, but everything else I will transfer on here. So I'm going to get that transferred on, and then we're going to get to base coating. Alright, we're going to get started here. We're going to base coat in the sled, the bottom part of the sled, with light avocado. And everything will take 2 coats. I'm using a 1/2 inch flat wash brush. I'm thinning my paint down with a little bit of water. This will give me smoother coats. You want to try and use a bigger brush if you can, because this is such a big area and you don't want to be constantly fighting with a small brush when you do this. That will just make you work way too hard. I've had this little calendar holder for a long time, several years, and never could quite figure out what it was I wanted to paint on it. I'm just smoothing this out a little bit. And I had drawn this pattern up a couple weeks ago, and I was trying to figure out what I could paint it on, and I came across this buried in the bottom of one of my, I have these little rolling cabinets that I keep my surfaces in, and I came across it the other day. I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I need to paint this on. And I love fall, and you can buy extra inserts for this, and I love fall, so I think on the back side of this I will paint fall, so I can have my fall and winter together. And I kind of have an idea of what I want to paint on the other side. The reason that I painted the base soft black is because I thought I could work just about any pattern in to go well with that soft black on the frame itself. So this color here is cad yellow for this first present here. I'm going to paint the presents and the tree in, base coat them in, and then I'm going to come back and do this trim here. I want to do it last in case I kind of get over on it when I'm painting. Okay. The tree is based in with Hauser Light Green. This present is based in with lavender. No, this one is Blue Harbor, and this one is lavender. And then I brought the soft black of the background of the frame into the skids down here. I forgot to put my little star up there on top of my tree. I did want to go ahead and transfer that, so I'll have to draw me a little star here real quick, and it will also be based in with cad yellow. Colors out here, lavender and blue harbor. And then this right here, this part where we'll make it, it's going to look like a candy cane, is going to be based in with light buttermilk. I'm just continuing to use this same brush, but you can go to a smaller brush, whatever you're comfortable with. I know a lot of newer painters get intimidated by those big brushes, but it's all in your pressure and where you put the pressure. And I just think if you can learn to use a bigger brush, it makes your painting so much easier. Okay, then light buttermilk for this trim here. Now it's not going to take a whole lot of paint for any of this. It's not a super big project here. So I'm using a 4 round brush here. I think fall is my favorite season. I love painting it because I love the colors. But it always seems when I get ready to sit down and paint, Christmas things pop into my mind instead of fall things. So I have all these Christmas ideas that I want to paint, even though fall is my favorite season to paint. Okay, now the skids down here, I'm going to use a 3, no, a 1. I believe it's a 1. Yes, a 1 round. I like this brush because it flattens out like a flat. And you can use it as a round brush or a flat brush. So I'm just going to thin my paint just a little bit with some water, just because I want it to flow off of my brush really nicely. Okay, and when you're doing these curls and stuff, you want to stay up on the toe as much as possible to keep them from getting too fat. So And it's always easier, I think, if you're pulling towards yourself. And I know this is going to be kind of upside down for you, but so I've got my brush loaded. It's flattened. This is going to be the biggest part here. Just follow your line, keeping your brush flat. If you just take it in small little sections, it won't seem quite as long or as intimidating. Do I even have you on camera? No, I don't have you on camera. Sorry about that. Okay, so there's the bottom rung of the skid. So now we want to do these curly cues here. So you want to stay up on the tip. So I'll try to keep you on camera here, but I want to get you close so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this one I'm going to start up here. If you break it down into just little strokes instead of trying to make the thing all, the curly loops all at once, then it makes it much easier. And I usually try to start down here. My paint's a little dry, so I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. I'm going to break this one down, join them here. I'm staying up on the very tip of that brush. Only giving it pressure when I want pressure in the fatter parts. Where are you? You want to make sure that it connects to the sleigh, not leave it just hanging out there in midair. Alright, so there's our first base coats on all of ours. So I'm going to get my second base coats on everything so we can start adding the detail. Okay, I want to base in the lettering while we're base coating. and it is tomato red. And lettering is done very similar to how we did the skids down here and all the squirrely stuff. The swirly stuff, not squirrely. Anyway, I'm using a number 1 round, and in the places where it's narrower, you want to stay up on the tip, and the places where it's a little more fat, you want to give it a little more. This is my lettering that I printed off on my computer. I was trying to decide what it is that I wanted it to say on this, and I decided on "'Tis the Season." So you can see it's fatter through the middle of this T and a little bit up here on top. So I'm going to keep my lettering that I printed off in sight where I can see it, so I know where to put pressure and where to be on the tip. So I'm just going to start right here. I'm on the tip, pressure on the tip, going back for more paint because I want to keep it loaded well on the tip. And this will take 2 coats as well. So I'm starting up here, I'm giving pressure, I'm letting off, I'm coming up to the tip, and it's got this little fat place here on the very end, so I'm going to go ahead and make that and then come from that to the rest of it. Okay, we'll move on to the next letter. I keep water in my paint because I need it to flow like ink. So you need to have it thinned, the consistency of ink. Okay, where are we? I want to make sure I'm keeping you on camera here. So the dot on the I is just a little dot. Okay, and the I, I'm going to go ahead and flatten my brush out because it's fatter at the top. And then I come up on the tip. And lettering is the same as down there. If you break it down into just little lines, then it's so much easier. If you don't look at the letter as the whole letter and just look at it as, okay, well that line needs to be straight, that line needs to have a little curve to it, and just be aware of the pressure that you're putting on your brush. And lettering is much easier if you can pull down in a downward motion. So that's why you should always break it up into strokes. Because when you're pulling down, it makes it so much easier than trying to make the whole letter in one swoop. Okay, we're going to start painting our little peppermint stripes on our trim here. I'm going to use a number 1. Turn it this way so you can get you on camera here. I'll try and go at them from this direction. And it will take 2 coats. I drew my lines in with a graphite pencil, so it will take 2 coats to cover that. And I'm sort of making a little S stroke here. It's not a very big one. It's a little bit smaller. That line there, let me clean that up. You can just take a damp brush and clean it up, or a Q-tip if you have a Q-tip handy. Okay, so I'm going to go back and put a second coat on here. I believe this is the one I started on. I'm going to add a little tiny bit of water to my paint because I want it to flow a little bit better. Is our little candy cane stripes. Now we're going to start doing some shading. So I want to start on the presents up here, so I'm going to turn this upside down a little bit. On the yellow present, I want to shade with some antique gold. And the brushes that I like to use to do my shading are these curved flat brushes from Low Cornell. They come in a 6, a 10, and a 12. I love them. Anyone that has some issues with floating, you should try these out. They are wonderful, wonderful brushes. So I'm going to use a 10. Find one that one was getting a little worn looking, so I'm going to get me one that's a little bit newer. Okay, we're just going to shade along this bottom edge of our gift. I'm going to shade along this side here, bring it down to meet that one, but not cut across it because I don't want to remove that shading that I just did. I think up here on my star, I'm going to do you could go to a round brush or a liner brush. I'm just going to put a little bit on the bottom of that star. Just on the very bottom. Okay, our Christmas tree, I shaded it with festive green. I think I came back and deepened it with plantation pine. So this is festive green. I wanted this tree to be different than my sleigh, since they're both green, I wanted that shade of green to be different. So let me get my mop brush here, and I'm just going to very gently mop that, soften that, especially in that water edge there. Now to clean your mop brush, you go to a wet place on your paper towel and wipe it off, and then you go to a dry place and dry it off. You don't want to stick your mop brush in the water because they take a little while to dry, so you'll have to have an additional mop brush if you do that. And they come in white and black, and I like the white ones because I can tell when they're dirty easier. Okay, the blue present, let's see, uniform blue, we're going to shade that one, and I don't think that's, yep, that's what I used, uniform blue. And while I have this color on my brush, I will get a smaller brush, and we're also going to shade the bottom of the candy cane. That out there a little bit. Okay, I'm going to let that dry before I do around the bottom here. So I'm going to get my 6 curve flat, and I'm going to do the bottom of our candy cane stripe here. A little bit more water on my brush. I keep a spray bottle, a little travel spray bottle that I got at Walmart, and I keep it here, and I spritz water on my palette paper, and when I'm floating, then I can go up on the water side of my brush, which is the side that does not have paint, because I only put paint on the toe when I'm floating. I can pick up water when my brush needs water in it. So I don't have to go dip it into my water basin and fill it up with water and then put it on my paper towel to get the excess out. It just makes it a whole lot faster. This is a pretty narrow float along here. You can see my paint's getting dry there. So I went and got a couple of teeny tiny water drops. Okay, I'll probably have to come back and deepen that in a couple of places. We'll see. We'll go up here on the blue gift and finish that one out. A little bit too much water on my brush, so just wiping that out and picking up some more paint. Still got a little bit too much water, so let me tap that. To let that dry. Come back with a little less water. Okay, dioxazine purple, we're going to shade this one. Alright, let me come back to this blue one and see if I can. I think I might want to. I think I'm going to switch my shading on that blue to Admiral Blue. I'm not liking that uniform blue. It's too dull for me. So let me try this Admiral Blue. I think it's going to be a much richer blue. And we'll also try it on our candy cane stripes here. Oh yeah, that gives it a lot more depth. I really like that. Let that dry. I'm going to redo the blue here on the candy cane stripes. That might almost be too bright. I like to lay my brush flat when I can, when I'm floating, because that will definitely make a softer float. But when you're doing a tight float, you've got to be up on the toe a little bit. Alright, let me finish that one out with this blue here. I think for this Christmas tree I want to float that one more time. Walk it out. Here's my mop brush. And they will lose hairs, but if you get it on your surface when it dries, you can just wipe it off. Okay. I'm going to deepen on that purple again too. Now I can always add some soft black to these colors for shading, but I want to keep the colors fairly bright since it is representing Christmas time. Alright, let's do some shading down here. And plantation pine is what I use. And I will put out some soft black too, because plantation pine can be a little bit transparent. And I want it to have a little bit more depth in there. So I will probably brush mix a little bit of soft black in there. I'm going to go to my largest, number 12 curved flat. Now, when you're floating a big area, which I consider this kind of a big area, there's two things that you can do. You can use some extender and brush a little bit of that on there and then do your floating. Or extender takes a little bit time to dry, and sometimes I just want to move on. I don't want to have to stop and dry my piece. So I will just take a little bit of water and pre-wet that. Now water evaporates fairly quickly, so I will just pre-wet that. You don't want it sopping wet, you just want it damp. I'm going to walk it out a little bit. I'm going to come in and soften. I will have to do this float a couple times to get it down as low as I want it. Now here I shouldn't need to dampen it first, but you can do that. Just going to continue this. And don't always feel like you have to do a float all in one fell swoop. You can do the little dab thing like I just did there. Soften it with your mop brush, and then when you come back and do your second float, it cleans everything up nicely. Okay, and I want to do all the way around the bottom. So with this, I am going to dampen this with some water. I'm laying my brush pretty flat because I want that wide float along there. I'm going to mop as I go so that doesn't dry before I can get back to it. Laying my brush flat right there. Oops. Okay, I'm going to mop that. Okay, the top's dry. You can always tell if it's dry if it feels cool to the touch. So I'm going to dampen that again. I'm just going to work in this area right here. I got outside my lines there, so I want to clean that up. If you have a background that's all one color, you can clean it up fairly quickly. I mean, you can clean it up at the end by just touching up your background. But when you've got a background where you've got modeling and different colors mixed in together, you can't do that. So when you get out of line, which I invariably do, you just want to clean that up real quick while it's still wet. Walking that down a little bit. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, we want to do one more time. I want this to come up a little bit more here, so I'm going to widen my float here. So I'm going to lay my brush flat and walk it out. And then mop it, starting in the water side, and then when I get into the paint area, I'm barely touching it with this mop brush. I just want to soften that and blend it nicely. Barely. Okay, that's nice floating on there. Okay, now we're going to start doing some highlighting. So on the yellow one, we are going to do light buttermilk. So let me get a smaller brush here. I'm going to go to my 10 curved flat. You can go to a smaller brush. Soften that down and gently mop. Do the same color on the star, and you can go to a smaller brush. You don't have to try and do it with a bigger brush like I am. Okay, let's see. Okay, the top of the highlight on our Christmas tree is going to be olive green. And we are also going to use that color on our sleigh to do our highlighting. So let me get it on the tree here first. I have olive green paint all over me. Goodness. So let's get it on the tree. And I want to walk it over. Gently mop it. So while we have this olive green out, we want to take a scruffy brush, and we're going to dry brush in these two areas right here. And I'm using a Low Cornell 3/8 inch crescent little scruffy brush. I don't know if it's a stencil brush or what it is, but it's a good set of brushes to have. Okay, so how we do this is we load the paint on our brush. So I've got the paint on my brush. And I go to a completely dry paper towel, and I rub the paint off. Pretty much all of it. You think it's all of it, but there's still plenty in the brush. Now I'm just going to start right here in this area. And I start with very gentle pressure because I don't know how much paint it really is still left in the brush, and I don't want a big old stark mark on there. And I'll come over here and do it over here. A little bit through here. Okay. I'm going to do that one more time. Taking the paint off of my brush. Very soft pressure to start with, and then you can start putting more pressure as you go. Okay, I want to add just a little bit of buttermilk to that. So I'm dirty brushing. So I just put some buttermilk on that same brush, and I'm just going to rub it off. You can see it's still going to be green, it's just going to be a lighter shade of green. So I want to create a little bit brighter area right in here. Just a little bit more. Didn't brighten up as much as I wanted. There we go. Much better. When you're doing highlights, you want to get a smaller and smaller area as you go. You don't want to fill the whole space every time. So each time you go to a lighter shade, you want that to be smaller and smaller. So now I put a little bit more light buttermilk on my brush, and so I'm just dabbing where I want the brightest places to be. Okay, and that's all there is to that. Okay, so the highlight on the blue presents is, let's see, look at my original piece. I think I did light buttermilk and then white, which I kind of like. So that's what I'm going to stick with. So light buttermilk. I think all these are, well no, this one's got purple cow on it, so I'm just going to keep this. My brush was a little dry, so I went over and picked up some water. Almost have too much water now, but I think it will be fine. I'm going to mop that a little bit, very gently. Hard line there I don't like. Just gently mop that. While I have this buttermilk, I think I'm going to go right on the edge of this tree. Enough of my brush. Go back and do that blue again. Bring it down into the present a little bit more. Need water. You can see right there it's very dry. Okay, I want to bring it down in here a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to mop that. Okay, the purple, the highlight on it is purple cow. Walking that down in there. Mop. Very, very softly, very softly. highlight on the candy cane is candy cane trim is Snow White. I'm going to use my 6 curved flat. I'm going to get a different bottle of white. This one seems awfully thin. Let's see how this one looks. Not sure this one's much thicker, but I'll try. Okay, we're going to go along the candy cane stripe. Trying to see how this would be easier for you to see and easier for me to paint. I don't think any way is going to be easy for both of us. Okay. I'm sorry, you're going to be a little upside down there. And go along the top. On my candy cane here. Candy cane trim. Using Snow White. My 6 curved flat. I'm going to try and keep that float as tight as possible. I don't want it taking over my whole candy cane. With this size of brush, you have to go back more frequently and get paint and water. Because it's such a small brush, it doesn't carry it very far. Okay. Now we want a bold highlight down the center of that, so I'm going to take my 10-0 liner. And I have the script liner that has the longer bristles on it. And I'm adding some water to my paint to make it inky consistency, because when you use your liner brush, you always need to have water in your paint so it will flow off the brush nicely. And I'm going to do a center highlight down this. And it doesn't have to be a solid line. You can break it up. Coming together fairly quickly. Okay, I'm going to take my pattern now and transfer on my ribbons and my ornaments, so I know where I'm going with them. And I don't want this to be too dark on here when I transfer this. Get the stylus here. I'm just going to draw a line this way and a line this way, because I know that just tells me where the ribbon goes. I don't necessarily need any thickness on that ribbon. It's a very thin ribbon. Just one here. This one has a angled ribbon. Now you can make these presents, the wrapping on the presents does not have to be plain. You can polka dot it and swirl it and which I might do. I think I just might do some swirling on that blue one. I think that would look very cute. Well, I forgot to put my bows on there. Okay, so big bow here. Ribbon. And this one's got a different kind of bow on it. Not really sure what kind of bow that is. And that's just a string bow. I don't really need to put that pattern on there. But you can put that pattern on if you need to. But I think since I thought of it, I think I will make this have some swirls in it. So I'm going to get my liner brush. Let's see, the ribbon is going to be red. So the swirls on the paper, I think I will make buttermilk. So, and you don't have to add these swirls on there if you don't want to. If you just want to leave it all blue, that's perfectly fine. So I'm staying up on the tip of the brush, just like we did these down here. I'm going to create like a C, and then I'm going to come back and fill it in, just like that. And this one kind of goes underneath. You can have one over here. You can have them where they're like, you can just see a little dot in the, like that one goes under. I'm getting thinner and thinner here. I think I need to thin my paint a little bit and try and be consistent. There we go. Okay, so that's probably good enough. Little swirls on there. The ones down here you won't really see, so I think I will take a little bit of my shading color and add to that. So it's not so dark, or so bright, I guess I should say. There, that keeps it a little more consistent. Alright, I think I want to paint the ornaments in first while I have all this paint out here. And I'm going to use the one round, and I just painted them in with tomato red, let's see, purple cow, what other color did I use? I used the cad yellow, and I can't tell what color that is. Green, so I must have used a Hauser light green. So you can pick and choose what ornaments or what color. Ornaments will be fairly simple, nothing fancy to them. They'll just have a little highlight on them. It will take 2 coats to cover them. So I'm going to start with those 3 there. I think I'm going to have to add an additional ornament up here. Blue. I have blue ones. Let's see. I have purple cow, so let me do the purple cow ones. Put one up here. Okay, and then Hauser green. Oh, you know what? I think I'm not going to put green ones on there. I think I will put Harbor Blue. Because the tree is green and I don't want to have too much green. Okay, I think I'm going to make that one purple. My color's too close together. Okay, put my second coat on while I have paint in my brush. Oops. Now see, I don't know if you could see that water drop that was right there on my ferrule, but you don't want to let that water be on your ferrule when you rinse your brush out. Dry it off, because if that had rolled down into my paint, it would just left a huge glob of water. This yellow, cad yellow, is a little more transparent. The blue ones. We'll let these all dry good, and then we're just going to come back and add a highlight on them. They're not going to get much more than that. Okay, the ribbon on this one up here is lavender. And I'm going to stay with this same brush, this one round, because this is a thin ribbon on here. So I just added a little bit of water to my paint. I'm going to stay up on the toe. I don't want a very wide ribbon on there. Okay, and I'm just going to have a couple of loops coming off of it. A couple little strings. Okay, then we'll add some highlight to that one. Widen this up just a little bit down here, because that other one's a little bit wider. This one is red. So I just loaded that same one round and I flattened it out so that it looks like a flat. And I'm just going to fill this in. Just a little bit closer. Just going to fill this in right here. bit of water, so I'm just going to go pick up a water drop. I should probably go to a bigger brush. This brush is making me work way too hard. I want to stay off of my candy cane right there. And that doesn't go all the way over there anyway. So let me draw that. Got a little bit of blue peeking out over there. Fill in here. Got my knot right there. Well, it would be good if you were on camera. This ribbon. I'll have to come back and put a second coat on that. And then this ribbon here is cad yellow. Just continuing to use that same brush. Just putting a little bit of water in with my paint to thin it down. Oh, goodness gracious. And then you don't do that. Okay, well, let's try that again. I can't see where my lines are. My easel thing keeps wanting to slide on me is my problem. It's a nice fat ribbon. I want it to be underneath that bow. It's not quite straight here. let that yellow dry. It's pretty wet. Okay, I'm going to go up here and start some second coats on my ribbons. You can see this ribbon is not directly underneath that bow, so I'm going to have to widen it. This one right here. Make it just a little bit wider, not much. I'll get a little bit bigger brush for that red bow, so I had to work way too hard. So I've got a number 4 round, and this will make a much bigger flat, so it takes just a few strokes to fill that in. I got out of line there because my brush was running out of paint, and so I tried to push harder to try and get some extra paint out of it, and look, that's what happened. Brushes are rolling everywhere. Clearly do not have a level table. Alright, let's get a second coat on this yellow. Make sure you're on camera. Turn it this way because it's much easier if I pull towards me. I wish there was a way for this camera to tell me when I'm off screen, but there isn't. So again, I apologize if you've been off screen. Okay. Now I want to let those dry, so we're going to go down here and work on the bottom, on the skids. We're going to start creating some highlights on here. The first color I want to use is Antique Gold. We'll use Antique Gold, then we'll use some light buttermilk, and then our final color will be white. Okay, so I want to thin my paint down a little bit with water. And I will be staying up on the tip of my brush. And I'm just going to create highlight places on here. And I'm just going to let my brush kind of run out of paint as I go, or give it less pressure, and it kind of creates like a dragging effect. This will help to define this a little bit too. I'm going to come back and do that bottom here in a second. I'm not giving much pressure when I'm doing this. I'm just kind of letting the brush run itself out of paint. Okay, I want to do along the bottom here. So, this is going to be like a hit and miss kind of thing. Just dragging it along there. Okay, and then I'm going to go over it just here and there real quickly again, because I want to brighten that gold up. I don't want it to fade so much down into that soft black. So I'm not going over every place that I just went over. It's just a hit and miss kind of thing. Along the bottom here. Okay, now I want to do the same thing with light buttermilk. And I will be doing less and less area as I get lighter and lighter with my colors. Bottom. Okay, and then we're going to do that one more time with just straight white. Okay. And that's got your skids done. Okay, let's go up here with some highlighting. Before I do that, if you need to, on this bow right here, draw in your detail, or trace on your detail, then you can do that. Okay, so we know where our center circle is, and this will have the bottom ribbon here. I don't really like that one, so I'm going to erase it. There we go. Okay, nothing else should need a line on it. So I'm going to use Napa Red to shade on this one. And I may have to add a little bit of soft black to that, so I'm going to go ahead and put that out on my palette. I'm not sure that I will need any, but just in case, I like to have it there. So we're going to shade next to this present. And I think I probably will have to have some soft black in there. I think I'm going to have to come back and touch up the white there on my candy cane. Okay, so I'll try to keep this one particular bow on camera. Stuck my hand in the paint. I'm sure you've never done that. Okay, so I want to shade underneath here. I'm just using Napa Red right here. Around our little loop in the center. Next to it on the tails. And then I'll do the inside, both of these. I know that's not going to be as dark as I want it to be, so I'm going to have to add just a little bit of soft black in there. Let me erase these lines here. So let's go for our second float on there, and we'll add just a tiny bit of soft black to that. And that will deepen that. I'm only going to have to touch that white up there. here. Around our loop. A little bit darker right there, where that lays over that ribbon. Okay, you can do the outside edges. And our highlight will be done with white. Don't want it in my shadow area, if I can help it. I want to do a back-to-back down the center of this. I guess while I had that white on there, I should have fixed that spot. Okay, now I'm going to get my liner brush and use white, thin it down with some water, and I'm just going to streak a highlight on these. A little bit more water. Let's see, where are you? Okay, I'm working on this purple one here. Okay, on the very edges of the purple, I'm going to use some dioxazine. This will be very narrow float. Okay, on each side of this one. Got purple paint all over my hands. Just going crazy with that purple paint. And then I'm going to just dab it down here where these ribbons kind of lay over each other. Okay, let's go to this yellow one. And we're going to shade with some antique gold. I'm going to add a teeny tiny bit of soft black to that. Don't want it to be too dirty looking. Shade right down here. Let's bring that up into the bow a little bit. I need a little bit of shading underneath here. Okay, now we're going to highlight with some white. I think I'm going to do a little bit more white on that one while I have it on my brush. Be down the center of this one. This one. Tiny little bit right there. I don't really see that. Okay, I'll perhaps do that again. Brighten it up. So I'm just going to go over here to this red one and add a little bit more highlight there. Okay, so while I have the white on my brush, on these ornaments, they will all get a highlight on them as well. I think I want to keep it more to the top. I'll fill that whole one with white. When I'm touching it with my finger, I'm just softening back that float so it's not got any harsh lines. Okay, I think the star needs a little bit on it as well. Okay. One more on this yellow present. I think it needs to be a little bit brighter on that top edge. And I'm going to do the same down here. Give it a little bit of this purple. bit of that highlight to come down on this blue. So I'm just going to pat some in there and soften it with my mop brush. Okay, I'm going to do the edge of the tree. I'm still using white. I think I'm going to brighten up my little stripe highlight on this candy cane trim. And I'm just going to go over the stripe that I already put on there. And just give it another coat to intensify it a little bit. A little bit more on this yellow ribbon. So I'm going to do a little bit more down the center. A little bit on the top there. Okay, I think that one needs a little bit of shading on it. Okay, so I'm going to get a tiny, tiny bit of soft black and some antique gold. I want to shade. Separate these two a little bit and then shade this one down here. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit so I can look at the whole thing. I think we've just got the lettering left to do. So the lettering is based in tomato red, and I want to try and do a drop shadowing on the left side of that, and maybe a little streak of white down the center for a highlight. So I'm going to zoom you in to see this. I'm going to use soft black. I'm going to use my #1 round just because I get better control from it than I do my liner. So I'm thinning my paint down with some water to inky consistency. I'm going to completely wipe my brush out, paint, water, everything. Then I'm going to go load my brush. I've got a nice little tip on my brush. So I want to go to the left side of the letters. So let's make sure we got you in the right spot. My paint's a little bit too thin. Make sure I got a nice tip. got this, I promise. Now you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I think it makes the letters look much better. Got my brush too dry now. It's not wanting to flow, so I'm going to go pick up a drop of water. This is really staying up on the tip of this brush. Okay, now I will use my tin O liner and thin some white out and do just a little streak down the center of them. Oh, the paint's not thin enough. You really got to stay up on the tip when you do this. Let the brush do the work. No pressure. H here needs a little bit darker line. Okay, I think that just about completes that. So let's zoom you out. And we'll slide it in here and see how it looks. There we go. That's the finished piece.